allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Brett.
Pray with me. Father, we truly thank you for all of the blessings that you bestow on us each and every day. With the holiday season upon us, keep those who need your help close to your heart. Help those who need warmth, food, and shelter during the cold winter months. And finally, help those who are sick or dying. These folks need your arms around them and the families who love them. Please be with our students and staff during the holiday season and the break, and keep them safe during their travels. And also be with our men and women of the armed forces who cannot be with their families during the holidays. Keep them safe and return them home soon. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Brett. Be seated, please. Jan, would you call the roll?
Dr. Kincaid?
Here.
Mr. Newsom?
Here.
Mr. Riley?
Here.
Mrs. Troop? Mrs. Zimmershed? Here.
President accounted for. Next item on the agenda is the presentation of the Employee of the Month and the Friends of Education Awards. The first will be the Certified Employee of the Month. Goes to Brittany Lawrence, the math teacher at East Middle School.
If you were to make a poster the Wildcat Way and it needed a spokesperson to demonstrate the meaning, you would want Brittany Lawrence. This young lady goes above and beyond and not only support her teammates at East, but she is there when they don't even know we're needing her. During the recent flood at East, if any of y'all heard of that, she was working diligently in other classrooms that were flooding. Miss Lawrence was just short of building an ark for the school supplies using her own materials. The rest of us, unknown of her deeds at the time, learned that she had been up most of the night trying to salvage the classrooms on the east side of the building. She worked hard and fast, getting wet most of the time, trying to save as much as she could. She used rolls of her own plastic to cover things too heavy for her to move, and on her own until help arrived. Miss Lawrence is an amazing Wildcat, and we at East are proud to have her as part of the team. We are privileged to call her a teammate, and most of all, a friend. Congratulations.
Next will be the Support Employees of the Month. It'll go to two people this time, to Carrie Young and Stacy Gibson, both teacher assistants at Washington Pre-K.
How lucky are we that we have two? Very lucky. We're so excited. So this nomination came in together. Whoop. So they both got it. All right, here we go. It is an honor to present Carrie Young and Stacy Gibson as the Support Staff Employees of the Month for December. This year, the school district implemented a new after-school child care program, also known as Cat Care. Here at Pre-K, since we dismiss at 2:30, it was difficult to find workers that time of day. Ms. Fisher, that would be me, had to recruit assistants. I begged them to do it, but actually they rose to that occasion. So I had to recruit them to fill this need, and both Carrie and Stacy stepped up to serve our students. And Carrie did that. Carrie did it, but Stacy did that before even meeting me. I just had emailed her over the summer, and she said, "Okay, you talked me into it." So Carrie and Stacy have done an outstanding job with this portion of their day. They escort students to the cafeteria, take roll, get name tags for students, and then get them started on an activity to keep students engaged until their relief arrives. They have jumped in and been assertive and loving by setting boundaries and continuing with our Washington procedures. They greet students with a smile, sing songs, dance, arrange materials, and have established relationships with all Cat Care kids. When you work with 4-year-old children, especially at the beginning of the year, it can be a real challenge. Students are often away from their families for the first time, and they are learning a lot of boundaries. Because of people like Carrie and Stacy, our students are able to make this adjustment smoothly and quickly. Stacy and Carrie have embraced this part of their day with positivity and flexibility. They have been a real asset to the program and a blessing to our students. We appreciate all they do at Cat Care and all throughout our school. And I'm so proud of you both. You're welcome.
She's doing a good job, Mr. Principal.
And our last award will be the Friend of Education. For those that may not know, PI partners play a really, really important role for our school system here. It'd be really hard for us to maintain without our PI partners. So this month's award goes to Community National Bank, the PI partner at Wildcat Academy.
Last year was the first year for Community National Bank to be PI partner for Wildcat Academy. Natalie Prather, the representative for Community National Bank, is a ball of fire. If you guys know her, you know she talks 90 miles an hour and she works 90 miles an hour.
I will vouch for that.
She is constantly coming up with new ideas and ways that Community National Bank can help our students. Last year, among other things, the bank donated an iPad for the end of the year auction. Natalie organized a donut party for the first day of school this year to welcome all the students back for another school year. She's already been working on ideas to help us with our attendance initiative and has donated Sonic cards for our attendance drawings. We really enjoy working with Natalie and Community National Bank. They're a business that truly cares about our students, teachers, and program. Our entire staff at Wildcat Academy looks forward to having them as part of the WCA family this school year. Thank you so much for everything you do.
Thanks, Natalie. If all the award recipients will go out in the lobby here, you'll get your picture taken, and be sure and smile. You'll probably end up in the Ponca City News. Next on the agenda, comments from the public. We didn't have any, did we, Betty?
Her hair looks really good.
Natalie?
Thank you, Natalie. At this time, I would look for a motion to recess our regular board meeting and call a public hearing for tribal leaders and Native American parents to discuss the participation of Native American students in educational programs, to comment on educational programs, and to review Section 2.5, the board policy on Native American community relations. Looking for a motion to recess our regular meeting.
I second, okay.
Motion from Don.
Oh.
Second from David. Call for the vote.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop? Aye. Mrs. Zimmershed?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries, and I think Chris Littlecook will lead the discussion.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm back again. It's that time of year where I get to share with you information about Impact Aid and what we do with it here in the district. Impact Aid provides dollars to help offset the taxes that are not collected from properties where Ponca City School students reside. Currently, we list students who live on low-rent housing properties and those that live on restricted Indian lands, which are out in White Eagle. And because we count Indian land properties, we have IPPs in place, and we have to review them each year. Also, we have a hearing each year, which is what this is, to share information regarding student participation, which you can see up there on the screen, and to answer any questions that parents or any members of the community may have about how the money is spent or what we're doing in education. The IPPs were rewritten 2 years ago, and there have been no changes to policy 2.5 at this time. And I just want to share with you, this is what I did the other day, went through and picked out all these extracurricular activities and listed the number of Native American students who participate out of the total. Like football is 28 out of 123, and then you can just go right down the line. There's really nothing too out of whack. No, we don't have any swimmers. We haven't had but 1 or 0 for the past few years. I don't know why that is, but. And this is a comparison of all the activities for the past 4 school years. And you can kind of see the trends. Football stays about the same. We have 28 this year. We've had 28, 25 in past years. I remember a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I remember Robin was really surprised that half of the wrestlers were Native American. And we've gone way down since that time. Now there's only 6 out of 48 who are Native American on the wrestling team. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it has something to do with the youth wrestling. I'm not sure, but the numbers have really dropped in wrestling. And it's just, you have hard copies of this as well.
I see where we have, you picked up a golfer,
Yeah, oh, God, golf.
the
man.
girls.
Yeah.
Is this grades 9 through 12?
This is 9 through 12, yes.
Okay.
And this is just kind of a year by year, how many kids we've had in the program, be able to count, and the amount of funding we've received from that. The funding doesn't come all in at once. It comes over a series of years, probably 2 or 3 years before we get to finalize the amount we get. And we just finalized FY 2018 last April, I believe, and ended up with $87,879 and some change. When I was putting this together the last couple of days, I was surprised that we have not received any money yet for FY 2020. Usually we get our first check by sometime in October. I was going to ask Brenda if she had seen anything, but she wasn't here. But when I logged on, that was our last payment was in April. So I don't know what the holdup is. Usually there's an initial check by now. And this is the preliminary count. It's not finalized yet because I have to check a couple of addresses down in Pawnee with BIA to make sure they are trust properties. But it looks like we're going to have 154 kids, which is, already did the math because I got the total number of students in the district from
Betty.
from Betty, sorry Betty, and ran the percentage, and we have just 3.08 kids, and all we have to have is 3%, so we'll still be eligible to receive the funding. But it's getting tight. I mean, it's been tight. I don't think we've ever been over 3%. So I'll entertain any questions if anybody has questions about anything.
No, a year or two ago, you said that the impact aid nationally was underfunded.
It's been underfunded for probably more than 20 years. Kicks in some kind of a proration called LOT, Learning Opportunity Threshold. They throw a formula on there. You only get a percentage of what you would get. If the program was fully funded, Ponca City would get over $400,000 a year. But since it's not, we only get like 5% of that. And then, since the funding's still not where it needs to be and expenses are going up, we're not even getting the complete lot amount nowadays. Now we're only getting like 80, 90% of that 5%. So the funding is just kind of, I don't want to say it's drying up, but it's not looking good because it's not fully funded. And it's been that way for a long time.
Do they give you a reason why it's not fully funded?
No, that's just the way the government is. They just don't fund it.
No hope in sight that it'll get better?
No. They've been lobbying for a long time. When they reauthorized everything in with the ESSA, they asked for just to maintain the funding where it was now, so at least it would be where we are now instead of getting even lower. So that's where we are right now.
I guess it's underfunded all over.
Yeah, but some schools, because of the way they put some fixes in there for small schools, like under 1,000 students, they automatically get 40% of what they would get. So say like Frontier, we have approximately the same number of kids at Frontier, but they get a way more than what we get because of the percentage. They get 40% lot instead of 5%. And there's some big school districts in California that get 100% of their money.
Really?
It's kind of weird.
Picking on us.
Any other
Money
questions
to
for
everywhere
Chris?
else, but don't. Oh,
And the amount of money, because we've been to DC a few times, they said the amount of money it would take to fund this program fully funded across the United States is less than a rounding error in the annual budget of the United States. So it's not even that much money. It's just they don't put it in there.
hopefully they'll fix that.
Yeah, I'll see.
Hope so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
This time we'll look for a motion to return to regular session.
I'll make a motion to return to regular session.
Have a motion from Judy and a second from
David.
David. Call for the vote.
Dr. Kincaid,
Aye.
Mrs. Truth.
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmershed.
Aye.
Mr. Riley.
Aye.
Mr. Newsom.
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Motion carries. Next on the agenda, a report with potential board discussion. Building assessment review will be first on Ponca City High School by Mr. Thad Dillbeck, the high school principal.
Pretty.
Good evening, everybody. We're here for the report on the high school. I do want to introduce Miss Easley that's here with me this evening. I think you all know Betsy. I'll talk a little bit more about Betsy and what she's doing for us a little bit later in this presentation. First thing I put up there was, again, the breakdown of the report card. That's how the points are allotted. The academic achievement is what we're going to spend most of our time talking about here this evening, but you'll also see there the LPA progress, the chronic absenteeism, which I do want to say right now through district and site efforts. Our early numbers are showing that our attendance is vastly improved this year, and then we'll talk a little bit about our post-secondary opportunities that we have going at the high school. Academic achievement. As I reported last year and is now as official, our ACT average is not where we want it to be. We're taking ownership of that. Nobody's shying away from it. Met with the curriculum committee last week, and I'll tell you guys that there's not a teacher in the building, nor an administrator in the building, anybody affiliated with the high school that is happy with that score. And we've taken some major steps already in the last couple of months to make some efforts to improve that score. What we've done is, as it says there, during the junior year, now the state testing is the ACT. As I reported last year, forever and ever and ever, we've all been taking the ACT. The difference between now and what we did years ago was all juniors now take the ACT. All juniors now take the ACT. It's not just your college-bound students. Now, for years and years, we have given the pre-ACT to our 10th graders as a way to not only allow those 10th graders to practice on an ACT product, but also then we can gather data from those 10th graders that will show us our strengths and our weaknesses so that we'll know how to address those weaknesses and remediate those students. We're now going to give what ACT calls the pre-ACT 8-9. We're giving it to our 9th graders. We did that just last week so that we can begin preparing students a year earlier for success on the ACT when they're juniors. ACT does a good job with these pre-tests. We get good data back from ACT, and it's very usable data where we can identify students and their weaknesses. And there's a number of ways that we're going to use that data to improve student scores. One of the things that we're doing along with also one of the changes that you guys have heard us talk about, our freshman Wildcat Way class. I want to get a little more in depth here and just talk about some of the things that we're doing in our Wildcat Way class. As soon as we decided a few weeks ago that we were going to give the pre-ACT to our 9th graders, we immediately then went and met with all of our freshmen every period during the Wildcat Way class, and we talked to them about the importance of the ACT, what the test was for, what the data was for, how the students could use that data, and what it would do for them. I think it's important that our students and their parents understand not only when we're testing, but what the testing is for and how it can be used and how it'll help them in the future. And so we tried to front load things a lot more with this pre-ACT 9 that we gave to our students last week. Also in our Wildcat Way class, I think that all of us in a nutshell say, well, Wildcat Way is an orientation to POHI that's a semester long, but we do a lot of things in there. Just an introduction into the Wildcat Way philosophy. Also, though, it's a time where we always have freshmen together, where our counselors can go in there and discuss grades and transcripts and how high school works, and as it says, their career preparation. And just, it helps our freshmen have a better understanding of how they can be successful at POHI. We've had a number of speakers that have been before our freshmen this year. We had our AD, Coach Levitt, came and talked to them about athletic policies and school spirit. Our school SRO, Officer Welch, came and discussed with them just social media and using social media properly and some concerns that we see there. Also in Wildcat Way, we have our ICAP implementation that we're working on in there. I have gone in and spoken to the Wildcat Way classes a couple of different times about just sharing with them information that they need to hear. We all know that if we just put that on an announcement, whether it's a video announcement or just announcing over the PA system, they don't hear it as much as if you're standing in front of them sharing that information with them. As I mentioned earlier, we went in and met with each freshman group about the pre-ACT and what it was and what it would do for them and how we would use that data. Okay, also in our freshman Wildcat Way classes, that's where we're doing some of the state required things that we've done at different levels with students, but we're getting it taken care of right at the beginning with our PFL, our personal financial literacy, and also the CPR requirements. All right, the heart of the matter, addressing our weaknesses and targeting improvement. In our meetings that we've been having for the last few weeks in regards to when we got our official ACT scores, one of the things that the professionals in this room and at my site realize is whatever section of the ACT you're talking about, and whether you're talking about the pre-ACT or the actual ACT test, is the reading that's involved in taking that test. So starting this week, we are going to retrain or train again all of our core teachers in close reading so that we can begin to improve our close reading skills in our core classes, okay, which will lead to a renewed emphasis in reading in all of our classes. Okay. Also, there it says Reading Plus. That's a software that the district is already familiar with. They've been using it at West Middle School for some time. We're going to use Reading Plus at the high school. We're going to target the students who score poorly on the reading portion of the pre-ACT, whether there's a 9th grader or a 10th grader. We're going to do that in our Wildcat Way classes with some training later on this week for our Wildcat Way teachers. We're also training our EL teacher, Mr. Allison, so he can work with our EL students. And then you see there a half-day reading teacher to work with struggling students so that we can really hone in or focus in on those students who need some extra help improving their reading skills. Probably the thing that is going to impact all of our students the most is the ACT online practice. ACT has been around forever. They're well respected. They understand what it takes to be successful on their test, and then they provide for us this ACT online practice. So if any one of you were to take the pre-ACT, we'll get data back on each one of you individually, and then that data is set up in the ACT online practice software, and that provides you with work specific for you, so that each student can work on their weaknesses. Also, next month, we're going to have a Chad Cargill ACT workshop for our juniors and sophomores. Also, we'll have some seniors that can take it. Students are signing up for that right now. That's on January the 20th. That's on a PD day, and Chad Cargill and his staff are going to come in, and we're going to host an ACT workshop. Chad Cargill's been around for a long time, and they do a really good job preparing students for the ACT.
Let me interrupt you there a
yes.
second. I was reading that article in the paper that sophomores will only be allowed to go if there aren't enough juniors and seniors.
Yes.
Why would that be? Why not encourage sophomores
Well,
to go ahead and make it now too?
we didn't have any idea how many we'd have sign up, and we didn't want to have 300 kids in the room. It's a little less effective. So, but I'll tell you this, Mr. Riley, as of today, tomorrow morning, we're announcing we're opening it to sophomores.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was where I was going with
Yeah,
the question.
we're
It's
opening
what,
it.
$30 for the
Yes.
for the class and
Yes.
$20 for the book or
Yeah.
something. So
Yep.
it's a good investment for them.
Yes. We'll continue to work with new teachers to ensure they understand where we're headed. Just the other day, Ms. Eric came to the high school. We were presenting one of the Wildcat of the Way awards, and we walked into a biology class. And when we walked in, one of our biology teachers had his students working on some ACT questions. I promised that wasn't by design, but he did come by and see me later on and ask me if he did good. And I said, yeah, you did very good. But we've got, in all of our core areas, in all of our areas, teachers that are starting classes with bell ringer questions that are ACT questions. In just doing a better job of constantly talking with students about what an ACT question is, how you can be successful in the ACT, and just exposing students to that kind of thought and looking at those kind of questions all the time. Also down the bottom, improved communication with families about testing and the benefits of the testing and the scholarship that can come along with that, and how data that we get back from ACT will also direct young people towards a career that their data shows they'd be well suited for, which leads to better academic planning. Did I leave anything out of that part? Okay. Here's some successes, some things that we've had going on at the high school recently. Many of you may know that DECA, led by Miss Monks, Heather Monks, she took a group of students and they went to New York City for an annual convention a couple weeks ago. They had a really good trip. Got to visit some. I know they went to NBC. They went and saw the Rockettes. They went to Macy's. They got to listen to some people talk to them about their businesses and their business practices. Is our Student Council Wild Week a couple weeks ago. It's an endeavor that we take on as a student body. As it says there, the proceeds this year benefited the Peachtree Landing. Had several activities going on throughout the week. I had to kiss a pig at some point during that thing. We had a dodgeball tournament with several teams in it. We had a game night that kids came up and played in. Wild Week's been going on, this is our fourth school year, and it gets better every year, something we're building on. Recently, Miss Parr kind of fell into a thing, or her AP English class Skyped with an author of the book they were reading. Tell us how that happened.
They were reading a critical article about, directed towards one of the novels they were reading in class, and Miss Parr mentioned the author's name of that author of that article. And one of our students, well, they're twins, they were both in the same class, the name sounded really familiar to them. They texted their sister, who is a graduate of Pohai, who now lives Massachusetts. And long story short, the author of that article is her father-in-law. And so Ms. Parr was able, through our former student, Katie Coughlin, was able to hook up her AP English classes with that author. And he talked about, what he had written, and the kids had lots of questions for him about his assessment of the novel they were reading. It was really cool.
Thank you, Ms. Easley. You see there that Mr. Murray's pre-AP bio classes have been going to pre-K and doing labs with the kids down there. I know that the Pohai kids really like going down there and working with the pre-K kids, and then I've gotten word from the teachers at the pre-K that they also look forward to the time when the high school kids come there. Of course, the Wildcat of the Week spoke about earlier. There's some more recent Wildcats of the Week. And that's that program continues to gain momentum. Kids talk about it a lot. Miss Arrett always asks them to name what the letters in Wildcat Way stand for, and we're getting better, aren't we, Miss Arrett?
Amazingly better.
Here's a shot. Our FFA donated canned food to the mission. They did a great job. You can see all that food back there. 1,400 cans. Just some of the stuff that we've got going on at the high school that's positive. Also, tomorrow night we have a band concert, of course, at the concert hall. And this Friday is our first home basketball game. Questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good job.
Mr. Toback.
Next will be Barbara Cusick talking about the dropout report.
You have a hard copy of this at your table. We have, since 2015, we've made some dramatic improvements in our dropout rate, and we've continued that. Prior to 2015, so back in the 2012s, 13s, our dropout rate, we may lose 50 kids a year or more. So we have continued to maintain that low number. This year, we had 11 dropouts from Poe High and 8 from our alternative programs, which includes Wildcat Academy, Share, and our Teen Pep program. We had an increase this year. In past years, I could look in Power School, and if our kids had siblings that had moved to another state, and they just had not sent us a request for records, we could count that as a student that had moved to another school outside of the state of Oklahoma. I can no longer do that. Our State Department is requiring us to scan all of those requests for records. So that is part of the reason we have had that increase this year in those dropouts. That's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. So, but still, when you look at 19 overall throughout our secondary, that is 1.31% of our student population. So I think the things that our high school and our Wildcat Academy has done have greatly improved that. So we have many options for students that we possibly didn't have prior to 2015, but we have maintained that 1% dropout rate. Any questions?
How do we compare to our peer schools?
We are, as far as peer meaning,
Sand Springs, Sapulpa, Bartlesville, Enid.
we are above those.
Above on
Yes.
graduation rate.
Yes, on our dropout rate.
Dropout, how
Yes. I can get that. I don't have those numbers exactly, but I can tell you what I've looked for. Some of those are like 3%. So we're doing well with the 1%. 1.31% was our percentage rate. But I'll be happy to get those for you. And
Right.
Oh, yeah, this is great.
good.
Yeah, it
I
is.
can remember
Compared to
when I
what-
first came on, it was not good.
no, it wasn't.
It was a lot.
We lost lots of kids.
Every year, we lost lots of kids.
So the things that are happening, especially at the high school level, they are being effective. Now, our middle schools, we typically don't have any because those are kids who may have gone to another state, and again, they just didn't request records from us, so we have to count them as a dropout. But we've not had, well, last year I guess we had one, but in the previous years we have no dropouts listed for our middle schools. Questions?
Another thing
Thank you.
isn't fair.
Next on the agenda, Shelley's going to tell us about the Oklahoma school report cards.
Yes, and I'll try to get through this as thoroughly and quickly as possible. But if you remember, back in August, I believe it was, I talked to you about our proficiency rates and where we were in comparison to the state. And as you know, there are some other components that go in with our school report card. And before I even begin on the school report card, I will tell you that this is mandated by ESSA. Every School Succeeds Act, and there's federal requirements, and 5% of the schools are to make an A, and 5% are to make an F, and then it's somewhat of a bell curve, which the State Department says it's not a bell curve. But what I will say, we are all measured the same in the state. Every public school is measured the same. So it is an equal playing field unless you have some components or not some components. And I will tell you, this is based on one test, one grade, one day, and we would never accept that for our students. And unfortunately, the state seems to deem, well, maybe not the state, but the public seems to deem a school as a success or a failure based on their grade. And that is simply not the case, because we do way more than a one-day test on any given time period. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the components. I'll go through really quickly. First is academic achievement. That's students who are scoring advanced, proficient, basic, or below basic. Then we get a grade in academic growth, which is something that schools have championed for a long time. And this means that students meet their individual growth targets, including moving from one proficiency level to another, or for moving from low to high within the same proficiency level. So for example, if you were scoring at basic and you moved to proficient the next year, you would get X number of points. Or if you were low proficient and moved to high proficient, you would get X number of points. And there's a formula that determines the academic growth score. Then there's the ELPA assessment progress, which is our English language proficiency assessment progress. And I'll refer to it a lot in tonight's presentation as ELPA. And this is students who pass the WIDA, the World Class Instructional Design and Assessment, with a score of 4.8. That's not grade level, that's a score, and it's tough to meet that score. Or if a student meets their individual target growth per year. So students taking the WIDA are expected to exit the program within 5 years. So the state recognizes that it's hard to get to that point. If a student comes in with no English speaking skills, they've got five years to reach that 4.8 on the WIDA. Chronic absenteeism, and I've talked to you a lot about this. This is a new component. Well, it's a couple of years old. Students missing more than 10% of the student contact days are considered chronically absent. We have 167 student contact days, so if they miss 16.8 days or more, they are chronically absent. Graduation, this is for high school only, our graduation rate. And our graduation rate comparatively across the state is really high. So if our graduation rate is high, then our dropout rate is going to be low. Post-secondary opportunities is just for the high school. This is for students who are enrolled in AP courses, concurrent enrollment, or technology courses that lead to industry certification. Mr. Dilbeck shared this information with you, the points that you get, and without me going through it, if we have an ELPA subgroup, that means 10 students who are listed as EL. Elementary and middle schools will have 90 total points. If they don't have an EL group, they only are required to have 75 total points. And some of our elementary schools have an EL group and some don't, and same thing with middle school. At the high school, our high school has a total of 90 points because they do have an English language proficiency group. Now, they have post-secondary opportunities in graduation, whereas the middle school and elementaries do not. They do not have the growth score because it's the one test as a junior. So it's hard to deem growth at the high school level. I mentioned this to you, ESSA plan guidelines submitted to the OSDA is that 5% of the schools will receive an F, and the bottom 5 of the schools, percent of schools will receive an A. Well, I said that just backwards. Top receive an A, bottom 5% will receive an F. Now, this is a chart, and there is tons of data in here, but this is a chart in which compares us to the state. our district, and each site. And the state scores are across the top, and then our scores are listed just below. If it's in red, that means we're below the state average. If it's in green, we're above the state average. And you can see where our strong section is academic growth, because that's definitely where the most green cells happen to lie. We definitely need to work on our ELA score. That's our English Language Arts. We're just below the district. Some of our sites are above the state average. Our math score is above the state average, but we consider that an area for growth. Our science score is definitely below the state average. It's our most significant area in which we need growth. Then academic growth, this is the composite. This is the percent of students who met target growth, 59% in the state, and we're at 65. Our ELA growth was just below the state average, and our math growth was above the state average. And these are the percentage of students that met that target growth, but for the ELA growth and the math growth, it's based on points. It's based on how the student scored or grew from their previous testing. So there's a compilation of points. There's a formula. Our ELP is our English language progress, and that's an area in which we really do need to grow. The state average, 29% met progress. Ours was 19%. Chronic absenteeism is an area we need to work, and I've highlighted that mostly in green. We don't have an issue in our elementary schools, but we do have an issue at Lincoln, which is our highest poverty rate school. Here's the state, 86% of students were present for more than 10% of the year. And in our district, this is for fiscal testing year 19, 80% of our kids were present for 90% or more of the year. You can see graduation rate. We truly excel. The graduation average for the state is 60%. Ours is 77%. Post-secondary opportunities were off the state by 3%, but I'll talk to you a little bit about that. Here's the economically disadvantaged rate, state, district, and then through all of our sites. Then the overall grade, your district doesn't get an overall grade, so that's not available, but you can see the overall grades of all the sites ranges from anywhere to a B at Woodlands to a D at Liberty, Union, East, and Pohai. And I will go through each site and talk to you about the steps that we're going to be taking for growth. As you know, Mr. Dilbeck presented tonight, and as soon as we got our report card grade back, even though this should not be our sense of urgency, it became our sense of urgency because we want the best for our kids that can possibly occur for them academically, socially, and for their well-being. I'll talk to you first about the elementary data. This is a comparison from 2018 to 2019. This is Trout. They did not have an EL subgroup, so they only had to maintain 75 points. They went down just a hair in academic achievement, increased in growth, stayed constant at chronic absenteeism, but their overall went up because their growth was significant, their academic growth. This is Garfield comparison. Academic achievement went down, growth went down, and if you'll remember, Garfield showed lots of progress in 2018. They did not have an EL subgroup last year. They did this year. So did they have 12 students, did you say, Barbara? They had 12 students that counted a full 15 points, and 8% of those made progress, so it was an F. Their chronic absenteeism, as you know, I've shared that with you. They really did a lot with attendance over there. improved to an A, but overall went down, likely because of the EL subgroup and the drops here. But this was the significant impact, their EL subgroup. Liberty comparison, a drop in academic achievement, but a huge jump in growth, which frankly, there had to be a huge jump in growth. Really disappointed in the growth last year of Liberty. Our students at the higher poverty schools typically had a lot further to grow than our lower socioeconomic students. They did have a big increase in English language progress, and chronic absenteeism really made an impact. 5% difference, a difference of a D and a B. And this is a moving target, this bell curve. That's not a bell curve. It depends on how the state performs. So you never know what our grade's going to come out. Overall, Liberty did increase from a 19% D to a 34% D, and that's a pretty huge gap from a D to a D. So, but there was some growth. Lincoln comparison, slight drop in academic achievement, slight drop in academic growth. This can be, these small percentages difference could be just a minimal number of students, but they had a huge jump in their EL progress. And we have an EL assistant over there who has done amazing things. She's really on target and does great things with our students. Chronic absenteeism was down just a hair at Lincoln, but dropped from a D to an F. But overall, their grade remained constant. And even though they went down in every area, the EL progress kept them constant on their overall grade. Here's the Roosevelt comparison. Not much in academic achievement, drop a little in academic growth, still maintain the same grade. EL, maintain the same grade. Chronic absenteeism remained constant, dropped just a hair, but still maintained the same grade. So unless you really dug into this information, the public would see they had a C last year and a C this year. Union comparison, significant drop in academic achievement, slight drop in academic growth. Union does not have a subgroup of English language learners. Chronic absenteeism has been a strength at Union. Overall, dropped from a C to a D. And at Liberty and Union, we do have new leadership at both of the sites, and we meet in our elementary principal PLCs, and we track our STAR data, and we're showing progress at both sites. So we think that'll make a difference for next year. Woodlands had an increase in academic achievement, and I will tell you that Mr. Williams was not pleased with his academic growth because it wasn't number one in the district last year, and that's a big jump. Even though the letter grade didn't change, showed a lot more progress in academic growth. Some of the things that he did was that he focused on wherever the student was enriching, if they needed enriching, remediation if they needed remediation. So really targeting the skills that they needed. Chronic absenteeism went down 1 point, went from an A to a B, but I don't know why that didn't show up, but that should be a 68% B. Overall, they went up likely because of this definitely because of this huge jump in academic growth. Now here's the elementary academic achievement percentages. State average is in black. You can see our schools that were above the state average in academic achievement across the board. Then here's our elementary academic achievement ELA points. These are the percentages of students who scored proficient or better. These values are in points because it tells you what they scored on the test. The average number of points gained for elementary ELA in the state was 43.20, and you can see our schools that were above and our schools that were below. Here's our elementary academic achievement math points. Here's the state. our schools that were above, schools that were below. Science, 47.30 for the state, 2 schools above, 1 school different here. Trout did not meet the state level, and our schools that were below the level in science. Now, this is interesting. This is Mr. Layton tag-teamed these charts with me. We worked on these over the Thanksgiving break, but this is our academic growth for elementary versus our peers who have greater than 75% of their students on free and reduced lunches. And what this shows is that our higher poverty schools scored right at the top with their peers in the state. And there's a tool on the state website that we can find our peers. And we did a lot of abbreviating. We've got like Shawnee, Mustang, Enid, and then you can see our schools are in the red. Liberty, Lincoln, Roosevelt, and Garfield. Here is our academic growth for elementary with our peers, greater than 75%. Liberty, with our peers, did not hit the target. Roosevelt and Garfield did. This is our academic growth, elementary peers greater than 75% free and reduced, and all of our high poverty schools were in the top half of their peer schools as far as growth in math. So what that tells me is our higher poverty schools are performing at the top with peer schools who have the same poverty rate. And I can tell you there is a huge correlation between these scores and the poverty rates of schools. Now, for our elementary sites that have 40 to 74% of their students on a free and reduced lunch, we didn't score as high. Union, and you know from the grade, that's kind of apparent. Trout, and then Woodlands right in the middle of the pack. And our principals have not seen this data. They will see it tomorrow. So I'm going to go back. Here's our high poverty schools. Here's our lower poverty schools. This is ELA in lower poverty schools. And this is math in our lower poverty schools as comparison to peer schools. Okay, here's our middle school data. Here's our West comparison from 18 to 19. Growth in every area, with the exception of chronic absenteeism, still made the same score, jumped a letter grade from a D to a C, 41 to 49%. East comparison, we dropped my value when we change computers. When I work on this at home or on my desktop, sometimes when we move to this one, you can't see the values. But we had quite a bit of a drop in academic achievement at East. Academic growth went down. They don't have a subgroup of EL learners. Chronic absenteeism was high. Only 65% of the students at East were at school for 90% or the more of the school year. And I can tell you a lot of that was attributed to suspensions. Had a lot of suspensions, so that really hurt. His grade dropped from a 62% B to a D, and I'm not sure what that percentage value is. It's somewhere 48 is what I seem to think it is. But if we didn't have this huge drop in chronic absenteeism, I feel confident he would have maintained a C, because there's not a grade other than chronic absenteeism component that's less than a C. Now,
What have you done to East?
oh,
Obviously, East so far looks worse than anything we've seen there.
I'll show you. Okay, I'm coming to all of our growth. Well, I'll get through all the data for all the schools, and then we'll talk about comparisons. Now, here's what I can tell you. As far as our middle schools and our peer middle schools, we're at the top. Here's our academic growth with peers greater than 50% free or reduced, and Mr. Layton had to capture that 50% to get both of our schools in there. Those are our peer schools as far as numbers and as far as free and reduced rate. West is at the top. East is right about in the middle of the pack as far as academic growth composite. Here is the math. West is at the top. This is growth, and East is somewhere near the bottom in math as far as peer schools. Here's our academic growth of ELA with peers. East is at the top, West is right in the middle. Here's our high school data. And as you know, we had Mr. Dilbeck come in tonight. As soon as we got our ACT scores back and our report card back, we met at a district level and came up with an action plan. And you know, we met with the high school staff, and they came up with an action plan, and they are already on it. And what I can say about High, we do the pre-ACT, so we have to focus on those standards if that's what our kids are graded upon. And something that I thought was interesting in their staff meeting, Ms. Easley has some data about the average, the score, the ACT score that it takes to get into a university. Correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't put those on here, but OU is 26, OSU 25, directional schools, are 20, Northeastern, Southwestern, Southeastern, and so forth. NOC, you have to have an ACT. And if you'll remember, Mr. Dilbeck told you that our average ACT score was 17.8. And that's for all of our kids, not just our college-bound kids. And Ms. Easley, you're going to try to work on segregating that data and see what our average score was for our college-bound kids. Did you come up with? Still working on it. It's going to be mining some data to find that out, but it'll be interesting to know. Really dropped in academic achievement at the high school. Graduation rate did drop some, but we still maintained that B. EL, big drop from a C to a D. Chronic absenteeism, look, 4 percentage points, and based on the state rate is how that's calibrated. So we went from a C to an F in chronic absenteeism. Post-secondary opportunities, 2% difference, maintained a C. Still maintained a D overall, but the percentage was quite a bit different. Here's High to the state comparison. Our only area above the state as far as the components at High happens to be graduation rate. Here is the academic achievement composite for high school versus peers of greater than 50% free and reduced. You can see we've got Mustang, Guthrie, Sapulpa, Enid, Shawnee, Claremore, and Stillwater. Mr. Layton captured Stillwater. I would not count them as our peer group because their free and reduced rate is a lot lower than ours. Academic achievement of the high school in ELA versus peers, you can see where we fell. Here's academic achievement at the high school versus our peer schools. Our strongest point. Science, low across the district. Okay, so I did a chart because I knew that board members would ask about our area schools, and I put, we're comparing apples to oranges here. It's really not a good comparison. So you can see the schools in our area. I put the number of students that they had, total elementary. This is our elementary overall. If they're in italics, they do not have an EL subgroup. So the only schools that had an EL subgroup were Blackwell, Tonkawa, Ponca City, and Scheidler. And there are the overall grades. I will say that Peckham had 92 students, and their chronic absenteeism rate was 100%. So, and they're just the same letter grade that we are. Now, if we compare apples to apples, Sapulpa, B, Sand Springs, Enid, Muskogee, and Ponca City, all a C. And I will have to say that Muskogee had one magnet school where their percentage, their composite report card score was 99. So that one kind of skewed the average there for us. Performing below us would be Guthrie and Shawnee. Here's our overall middle school. We had the only middle school that had an EL subgroup, and that was West. But combined, these are both East and West. Scheidler had 55 students and 3 percentage points greater than us, and they were comparing apples to oranges. And here we are for our middle school. When we're comparing apples to apples, we were at the top of the pack with our peers. Here's area high schools. We were the only high school that did have an EL group. A lot of these are 4-day schools, Woodland, Scheidler, 4-day-a-week schools. And here's where we fell with the high school with our overall similar size and demographics. And I put this in here. Enid did not test 95% of their students, and we still don't know what that consequence is, do we, Ms. Cusick? If you don't, but you're supposed to. All of our area schools scored a D, but if you want to dig right down to percentages, there we are. All of our similar size and demographics. So here's our action steps for growth, our academic achievement. At the beginning of this year, we knew that our kids have to grow in reading practice. We do great in the elementary level in phonics, and we're used to filling those holes. And one of our principals even said, we have kids in 4th and 5th grade that still have phonics holes. But bottom line, we can't expect students to go to the high school when they're a junior and have reading stamina on a timed test for ACT. There's a lot of reading. So we have got to have our kids dig into text and learn vocabulary through text, because there's a lot of research out there. Well, it's proven. Kids that come from higher poverty homes have come to us with less academic background knowledge. They don't go on vacations. Their families, they can't afford to. They can't afford to go to museums and to the zoo and things like that. So consequently, their vocabulary is a lot lower from students who come from lower socioeconomic families. As you know, we talked about this in committee. We're implementing Reading Plus to PO-High for every freshman and all students reading below grade level, and then we'll make Reading Plus available to all students to improve ACT reading stamina. We already have it at West. We are also adding Reading Plus to East Middle School for the reading class and for the SPED ELA class. And I want to remind you that we are utilizing Reading Plus at West Middle School, but we reduced our reading classes at West Middle School from 8 to 4 teachers in 2005. So that's when these kids would be juniors, or seniors actually. They took the test when they were juniors. So we went from half of our reading teachers. And this was due to revenue failure and cuts and different things like that. And hopefully we can add more teachers in. Now the issue is teacher shortage. We have an increased focus on teaching skills and vocabulary through text, not in isolation. That's with our elementaries, middle schools, everyone is focusing on this. We are training our new staff in close reading, and we're going to incorporate close reading into all content areas. And we talked about this in curriculum committee. Close reading is reading a complex piece of text, and everybody reads the same text, and it may just be an excerpt or a passage, and there's certain ways that you annotate the text. Everyone learns the vocabulary the same way, and you focus on it until everyone understands the text. So it builds stamina, it builds complex reading skills, it teaches skills through specific annotated directives through close reading. We are having that training, actually starts tomorrow, right? The 10th, 11th, and 12th, we'll go through close reading with everyone at the high school. And what kind of brought this home to us, we were in admin council and we were talking about close reading, and Mr. Dilbeck said, you know, I've heard about close reading ever since I've been here, but I've never been trained. So we're going to solve that problem. Everyone's going to be trained, and you know we hire 50 to 60 new teachers every year. We will also, in our middle school PLC, we had 5 principals here, and 2 of them had been trained in close reading. So that means 60% had not. So they're going to go to this training. And then on our PD day in January, we're going to do middle school close reading training. Our instructional coaches at the elementary schools do close reading training continually. As Mr. Dilbeck told you, the pre-ACT was given to all freshmen. We'll use that data to intervene. And not that our high school was not intervening, but they were focusing on standards and intervening based on common formative assessments based on the standards. Well, if we've got the data from the ACT, that's how we need to intervene. So that's a big change for us at the high school. As Mr. Dilbeck told you, we're going to focus on the ACT online practice program. And they're going to do the ACT boot camp. Has that been determined if it's 4 weeks or 6 weeks prior to the ACT? 4, still to be determined. Sometime prior to April when that test comes, we'll have a boot camp, and in all of our core classes, we'll focus on areas where students need to grow. And as Mr. Dilbeck told you, all of our teachers, even our art teachers, even our fine arts teachers, any electives are all focusing on ACT type questions. And Ms. Easley's really working with them on that. Even if they have a little dose of it in every class, it's going to make a huge difference. Okay, so let's talk about our action steps for growth as far as science goes. And I've talked to you all a lot about science. And right now, we do the science kits in elementary. And every one of our elementary scores, with the exception of 2, are below the state. And not just a hair below the state, but significantly below the state. And I've talked to you about maybe changing up what we do in science. The science adoption is in fiscal year 21, so it would not be fiscally wise to make a change next year. It's our social studies adoption. So one thing that we did, Terry worked with the instructional coaches, and what has been determined that entire test is about, just from our test questions and for our moderators, for students who need help reading the test through their IEP, that the entire science test is based on reading and interpreting graphs. So Ms. Vogel and the instructional coaches went through and created graphs for the standards for each grade level that the teachers are implementing in the classroom. Now, they made 72 graphs, so that would mean 2 a week if we start at the beginning of the year. Elementary principals started last week on that, and the expectation is that they implement 4 a year. The teachers are talking about it. We made it easy for them. Teachers are busy. They can barely keep their nose above water. They can't go in and pull those graphs, and that way we're focusing on the same standards, the same graphs district-wide. And we'll see if that makes an impact on our science scores. I already told you in ELA, we're spending more time in text. How you become better at anything is practice. So not just working on skills, but practice reading. Close reading of science text. We are really pushing our elementaries to focus on science text when they are working on close reading. Pick an article that is complex in regard to one of their standards in science. At the secondary level, the ACT online practice program will help with that. ACT boot camp program will help. I went ahead and threw in math, even though we're above the state level in math. So here's our plan. In addition to science, those graphing activities for K through 5 will enhance math knowledge as well. We have the blueprints for the ACT, and our blueprints indicates that 40% of the math content on the ACT test is based on standards from grade 8 and below. And Miss Easley, throw some more in here if I don't have them all mentioned. Percentages, division, multiplication, fractions, ratios. Okay, those are basic grade 8 and below. If 40% of the questions of the content is based on those skills, we really need to focus on that. And I know for a fact they're really going to focus on that in their boot camp for the students that are not meeting those standards. And I said they're focusing on the ACT boot camp. Now, I've talked to you a lot about our action step for growth and chronic absenteeism. You know we have the new attendance policy, and we communicate with our parents constantly when they get to different steps of absences. We've also had an increased focus at the pre-K center on attendance. When I collected this data at the end of the year last year, our lowest site was the pre-K. And you know, we're not graded on that, and we had never talked about attendance at the pre-K, but if our kids aren't there, they can't learn, and that's fundamental basic learning. And something that's interesting at the pre-K center, it's all in one spot. And we cannot transport pre-Kers because we don't have seatbelts in our bus. So parents have to bring them to the pre-K center. And what we're finding is a lot of our parents don't have a mode of transportation. And if they took a taxi cab to the pre-K center, they would have to ride with their child to the center, back home, to the center, back home, 4 trips, $5 each way, $20 a day. Well, you can afford a car for $20 a day. You know that the Brewer Foundation endowed some money to the district to be used to supplement needs for our high poverty students, and that was not spent last year at the pre-K center. And then we got it again this year. Mrs. Fisher is using that money for punch cards for Cimarron Transit that she's giving to her families that don't have a mode of transportation. And so basically, we're paying their transportation. It's $1 through Cimarron Transit versus $5 each way in a taxi cab. And then her PI partners, Mr. Riley, you mentioned what a help our PI partners are to us. They had a parent cafe, and they decorated all Parisian. It was phenomenal, and they just gave donuts and coffee to parents who got their kids there on time, and they got to register for a $50 gas card. And their PI partners purchased 2 $50 gas cards, and 2 parents got that, and they were thrilled. And they're going to do that once a month. It'll be a secret day, so parents won't know when that is, but they ran out of pastries and coffee, so their PI partners are going to double the amount. Take a look at our attendance rate chart. This is from our 2018 report card. Here's how it stacks up. Here's how it stacked up this year on attendance. And you know, in our PLCs, we've talked about this, we track our attendance every month. And here's where we are right now. If everyone, I threw the pre-K center in there, they don't get a grade, but it's important. It's not about that report card, it's about doing what's right for students, all of our students. But I threw in our grade for all of our students so far. The pre-K center started at 91 in September. They've come up 2 percentage points, and that's like unheard of. High has come up some percentage points. East has come up some percentage points since the beginning of the school year. So if we stay on track, if everybody makes a 90 or above, everyone will have at least a B on that report card. And it's not about having a B on that report card, it's about doing what's right for students. We need them here to teach them. Mm-hmm. So there's where we are on chronic absenteeism. For ELP, English language progress, we added an additional ELTA at Garfield. They didn't have one last year. They didn't have a subgroup. Last year they did have a subgroup, and they had 8% F. So we have an increase from 7 to 8 in our support personnel. We're going to do small group testing. And Barbara, can you talk about that just a little bit for our small group testing for EL?
We started last year asking the principals or the assistant, EL assistant, to be in the testing room with us because those kids don't know Tamara Cheney and myself. So at least there was someone there that they were familiar with. And that helped at the elementary schools. At the secondary level, we're going to have small groups of 5 to 6. We're also going to talk to them about the importance of this test because some of those kids are making a B's and C's in their English classes unsupported. So if they can make a B or C in their English class, they can pass this WIDA test. Some of them have taken it for so many years that they just blow it off. So we're going to invest a little more time in talking with those kids, explaining the importance of this assessment, and hoping that will help as well.
And tracking their progress is a high yield strategy that gains great results. So we're going to have all our WIDA kids that are tested through the WIDA track their progress. And the small group testing that's just having a relationship with whoever the test monitor is or the test administrator. We've got Imagine Learning at all sites. And if you remember, we purchased Imagine Learning in January of 2018 for Garfield, Liberty, and Lincoln to use as a pilot. Now, the WIDA testing has to start way in advance than our regular testing window. So they only got to use Imagine Learning for like a month and a half before testing began. Individually, it's 4 hours approximately for each WIDA test. So our students will have been exposed to Imagine Learning. We're seeing great results. We used it in summer school, saw great results. As Barbara mentioned, we're going to do principal conferences before testing to discuss progress and goals. And then in 2018, we had one student exit the program. And in 2019, we had 13 students exit the program. Remember, they've got 5 years to exit the program. Well, those 13 that exited in 2019 will show up on our EL progress for 2020. So that will be reflected on next year's report card. And I just said that. Now, here's something interesting. The results count K through 3 for EL students, even though they don't participate in the OSTP. I should say K through 2. So if we have a K EL student, their score is going to count on the EL progress, even though they're not state tested. So our little bitties count as well. Action step for growth on post-secondary opportunities. We can count career exploration internships. These are our students who go out into the community and work who are on an IEP. We currently have 22 students in that program, and if we would have counted them, it would have changed our grade from a C to a B. But again, that doesn't give me heartburn because it's not about that grade. We were doing what's right for kids. They just weren't coded as a post-secondary opportunity, and we'll code them that way next year. We are encouraging more participation in any of the internship programs. We're encouraging more participation in concurrent enrollment. And I don't know where we are on that, but I think it's an increase. So those are our action steps for post-secondary opportunities. I don't have an action step for graduation rate. We feel we're doing a great job with graduation rate. On the report card, you may have remembered that there's a section called Well-Rounded Schools. That's the program of excellence, safe and healthy school. Last year, they were developing and revising the rubrics. This year, they're still revising the rubrics, and each school got to select their areas of distinction. We all selected ELA and math, and then the third area was their choice. Then next year, these school distinctions are supposed to be visible, gold, silver, and bronze, based on rubrics that aren't even created yet. So we'll see if that really comes to fruition next year. But here are the well-rounded school programs of excellence that our schools could select from. So we hit the ground running. We accept responsibility for every grade. Do we like it? No. Do we think there are some things that are unfair? Yes. But we're all graded the same across the state, and we want to do what's best for the whole child. So as you can see, we've met as a district and created action plan to move forward. Any questions?
I'm gonna add, our graduation rate is not actually 77% for our.
Okay.
On the report card, it indicates that our graduation rate is 77%. Our graduation rate for our 4-year students that we graduate in 4 years is 92.3%. This report card, the state gave us credit and gave every school credit for those students who we graduated as 5th-year seniors and 6th-year seniors. This was supposed to help everyone in the state, but as you see, it dropped. Even our state average last year was 89%, and now it's 60% statewide. So it didn't help anyone. But I wanted to clarify that our graduation rate for our 4-year graduates is 92.3%. It is not 77%.
But they counted 5th and 6th-year seniors.
Yes, and I don't know, it looks to me that they somehow averaged the past 3 years, but even that doesn't make sense because we were higher than 77%. And I've looked at that many hours, and I have yet to figure out their calculation. But I just felt like you need to know that our actual graduation rate for our 4-year seniors is 92.3%.
Thank you. Okay, sorry it took so long, but I wanted you to have a clear picture of where we are and where we're going. And I have tried to think of every excuse in the world. There are no excuses. All we can do is put action into place and continue to grow. Any questions? Okay.
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda, which includes the agenda with commentary, minutes from last month's meeting, contracts, agreements under $10,000, and the surplus resolution, which added our old bus. And by the way, we're getting our new bus Wednesday, but we had to add the old bus to the surplus list. The contracts under $10,000 were very minor this month. Couple of them were, as Thad mentioned and Shelley mentioned also, the Reading Plus, some expenditures for the software use it at both the high school and at West. We rescinded one contract with one employee who elected not to become an employee, and so we had to rescind that contract.
Motion to approve.
So with that, I was getting ready to ask for, and Don just made a motion to approve
Second.
items 6, 1 through 4.
Yeah.
Judy seconded.
And Judy seconded it. Question or comments?
No.
Call for the vote.
Mrs. Zimmershed?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye. 7, action item, motion will be required to consider the following district financial reports, items A through L. Do I have a motion to approve these? We talked about them in the Finance Committee.
Yes.
Motion from Don,
Second.
second from Judy. Comments or questions? Call for the vote.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmershed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 2, consider and take action on the following contracts agreements. The first one's with Ardor Health. This is for the behavior intervention consulting services. This was the employee that elected not to become an employee, so we had to go out and contract it.
This is the BCBA, the Board Certified Behavior Analyst.
Right. This is for the
Yes.
one to
Yes,
replace
you are
the
right.
lady that
Yes.
elected not to become our
She's
employee.
going to become a contract employee.
Right.
You're right, sorry, Mr.
Second
Riley.
one is the agreement with Pinnacle for maintenance on the district switching and network gear. We talked in depth about this with Ryan. It's a pretty significant increase, but it's going for a 1.5-year contract. And with that, unless there's questions, I'd look for a motion to approve point 2, items A and B.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion from Judy, second from David. Call for the vote.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop? Mrs. Zimmershed?
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Motion carries. Do we need to go to an executive session?
Short.
Okay, motion to convene to executive session for one of the following purposes or all: to discuss the possible termination, reassignment, resignation, and employment of personnel on the attached detailed personnel report, to discuss confidential conversations with the board's attorney concerning pending claims and litigations, and to discuss the evaluation of the superintendent of schools contract.
Motion approved.
Have a motion from Don, a second from Judy. Call for the vote.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mrs. Zimmershed?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Motion carries. We are in executive session. Open session recital by the board president that minutes of executive session were kept by the board minutes clerk and will remain confidential. Number 6, consider and take action on recommendations for terminations, reassignments, resignations, employment of personnel. Do I have a motion? A motion from Don and a second from David. Judy, Nancy, whoever.
Just pick one.
Who did? I'd said David.
Okay.
Okay.
Call for the vote.
Mrs. Zimmershed?
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop? Mr. Riley?
Aye. Motion carries. Any new business? Shelley?
No new business.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Second.
Thank you, guys.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody, and Merry Christmas, and thank
Merry
you very much.
Christmas.
I just-